You see what this is behind me? That's right, it's a house. It's an Airbnb that I'm staying at right now. I'm taking my jet with my family, I'm cruising around the country, and you know what? Whoever owns this Airbnb, their house has gone up a lot in value. Chances are, if you've owned a home in the last 2 years, you could be up over $100,000. And today's video, I wanna talk about how you leverage that to make money like these people are.
One shot, now the future is yours. Go! I'm turning dreams into reality. Yeah, it's one shot, now the future is yours. Go!
So in today's video, we're talking about how do you use home equity to make money. Look at these houses. Super simple, super small, super basic. Whoever owns these homes, just by virtue of having held on to them the last 2 years, they've gone up a lot in value. And so understand that I get hit up with people all the time. They're like, okay, Kris, like I've got $100,000 of equity. I've got $200,000 of equity, and I'm scared to use that to make money because it means that I have to borrow. It means I'm gonna go deeper into debt. And I really wanna ask you, should you care as long as you can find something that is safe and secure and makes you a lot more money? Well, that's what today's video is all about. So check this out from CNBC. Right now we're hitting record levels of home growth. And what that means is that rising home prices means that today's mortgage holders have record levels of equity. The average mortgage holder in the US has $153,000 of equity on average. Now, I want you to think about what that means, because when the pandemic hit, prices soared nearly 20%. And then last year, they were up double digits. This year, they're up double digits. And what that means is that a couple years ago, if you bought a house for a couple $100,000, it's up $100,000. Don't use your equity to buy really loud bikes like that one. So here's my question for you. Listen, you're a subscriber on my channel for a reason, right? You're here to learn how to make money. Don't you actually want to make money by having your money work for you? I mean, listen, when you have a job, you know that you're trading your time for money. And if you're here as a subscriber, it's because you want to learn how to reverse the tables, which is, how do I get my money working for me? Turns out that equity in a home is a prime, delicious source for investing. Why? Because there are super inexpensive ways to, even free ways to access the equity in your home. And that money is so cheap. It's some of the cheapest money you'll ever have access to. But if you can access investments that make you a lot more money than the borrow rate, it's gonna make sense all day long.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, Kris, let's just say for a moment that I'm willing to access some of this equity. I'm almost a little embarrassed to say, but how do I do that? Like, is it like a really hard, complicated process to pull some money out of my house so that it could be available for investing? Well, I'm gonna tell you right now that there's one way in particular that is super simple. It's actually really easy. It's called a home equity line of credit. And you might be thinking, Kris, home equity line of credit, what is that? Well, it's actually where you go to the bank. Typically it's a credit union, not even where you traditionally bank at, and say, hey, I want you to evaluate my house. I'm interested in getting a free line of credit. And what they're gonna do is they're gonna say, wow, we've automatically pulled up the value of your house and we say it's worth $500,000. And what do you owe? And you're like, well, I owe $300,000. And they say, wow, we'll actually take some of that equity that you have and we'll make it available like on a credit card. If you use it, you pay, the money's real cheap. And if you don't, then you don't pay anything. A home equity line of credit, a H.E.L.O.C, is a line of credit that uses the equity you have in your home as collateral. Because H.E.L.O.Cs are secured by an asset, they tend to have higher credit limits and much better interest rates than credit cards or personal loans. So think about it this way. When the bank looks at this house right here, what they're thinking is, this person, they've got a job, there's a high likelihood they're gonna keep making their payments. This is a secure investment for us. And we know that the house isn't like crypto. It doesn't go crazy up in value, down in value. It's going up and nice and steady. So they say, well, we'll evaluate this house and we'll lend you up to a percentage of what it's worth. And then basically give it to you literally on a credit card or where you could just wire the money. And now you have access to using that money in your house. Now the big question is, what should you be using it for? Now, check it out. I've mentioned that home equity is some of the cheapest money out there. Let me give you an example. Banks normally will allow you to borrow 80% of your home's value. So let's just say you have a $400,000 home, but that you could borrow up to 80% of that, which would be $320,000. Well, let's also assume that you owe $250,000. Then you could get a home equity line for the difference between the bank saying we'll lend up to $320,000 versus the $70,000 in home equity. And basically, here is a $70,000 line of credit. So boom, the money's available. And now it's like, well, okay, Kris, what are some options? Like if I have to borrow that money at 4%, I better be earning at a much higher rate of return. Like what? So the secret to this game is what's called arbitrage, and technically a positive arbitrage. I'm gonna borrow at a certain interest rate and then I'm gonna lend it out at a higher interest rate. For example, let's just say that you have a home equity line for $100,000 because you have some equity in your home. And let's just say that the bank is willing to lend that to you at 4%. Well, you realize that 4% on $100,000 is $4,000 a year. Now that's gonna equate to payments of $334 a month, but basically it's okay, if I want this home equity, $100,000 of it, it's gonna cost me $4,000. Where can I place that making more? Let's assume that you have some investment options, because I'm about to give you a couple. And let's assume that your investments are earning 20%. Well, what's 20% on $100,000? That's $20,000. Now listen, remember it costs you $4,000 to access that $100,000 for a year, but you've placed an investment earning $20,000. So what do you get to keep? Well, my investment is producing $20,000 a year. The cost of this cheap money is $4,000 a year. Looks like there's $16,000 left over a year. That, my friend, is what is called positive arbitrage, and more specifically, a 5-to-1 ratio. I put up $1 and basically I get $5 back, whereas you're now producing $20,000 a year on that home equity and it's costing you $4,000. You're now keeping the $16,000 difference. And what if that investment is actually growing in value? Or what if it's producing tax benefits? What if it's producing active income? Well, this just got interesting.
It just got interesting.
Okay, so the first thing that I want you to think about is franchise, right? Like you can own a business as an absentee owner that basically runs itself. And think about the benefits of a franchise for just a moment. We're talking about a business that for the most part has a, on average, statistically 91% success rate. Now, why is that? Well, someone else already discovered the business model. They tested it. They built systems around it. You come in, you buy a franchise. You can do that with home equity line of credit. And then guess what? What if your business cost you $60,000 or $100,000? But think about this. What if it was making you $60,000 or $100,000 a year? That would be 100% ROI. That would be every year your money doubling. And you know what? It could certainly be a lot more than that, but that doesn't even mean you have to work the business because all you're doing is owning the business. Let's talk about a second investment option, right? I mean, I talk about real estate a lot. Do you understand literally in January 2022, over the last 12 months from January 2021, that the market is up 19%? That's a record high in just the last 4 years. But that's just one benefit of this. Look at all this real estate. That's an Airbnb that I'm staying at. It doesn't look like a lot on the outside, but you know what? Someone put some money into the inside. I'm paying several $100s per night. I'm here for a couple of nights while I'm just trekking across the country with my family. There's a lot of forms of real estate that you can own. There's tax benefits, there's the appreciation, there's the positive cash flow. I'm gonna tell you right now, there's a reason why I buy a house just about every single day, because of all the money that I make on it.
I'm getting paper.
Check it out. Today we've talked about the fact that if you're equity rich because it's gone up in value, that there's simple ways to access that. You could then use that and make money on it doing a couple of different things. You could get in the franchise game, you could get in the real estate game. If you're not really sure the most intelligent way to get in either of those games, I've left you with 2 different links below. Because I'm gonna tell you right now, Dan Olson is a buddy of mine who has done more franchising than you could dream of literally in lifetimes in just the last 30 years. Or if you wanna play the real estate game, that's another passive approach to making a lot of money. And there's a link down there about how I can show you how to access that equity and literally just pop it more intelligently into the best markets, into the right kind of real estate. Either way, you get to be passive, your equity gets to make money for you. And with that, my friends, I'm getting back to my family. Your links are below. See ya. Hey, thanks so much for joining me on today's video. Check it out. You might be curious to know when home prices are gonna go back down, because it's like, okay, Kris, this all sounds like fun and games, but what if my properties tank in value? What if I use some of my equity to go buy something and then my house goes down in value? Well, you know what? That's legitimate. And if you wanna know when I think it's gonna go down, my prediction is in this video right here. The second investment is real estate, right? In 2022, it's up nearly 19%. That means that if you owned $1 worth of real estate, probably with only, because of a lot of leverage, I'm gonna try it again.